Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that both looks at the finances of the music industry but also brings you the stories and comments about the past week in the pop business. He's Stuart Dredge. I'm Steve Lamack. If you want an easy guide to what's going on in the music industry and how it all works, then here we are this week. The world's most popular artists in 2025. The ticketing firm looking to help more artists connect with fans, real fans rather than bots. And it's a bad week if you're in a band wanting to have a big hit. But first, here he is with this week's conversation starter. Give us an interesting stat you discovered this week. What's your big number, Stu?
Big number is 2.06 billion this week. And that is how many chart units, which we'll discuss, the most popular song of last year, racked up.
And what was, put us out of our misery, what was the most popular song of last year? Remind us.
Well, this is, according to your pronunciation, it's Apata, or APT, by Bruno Mars and Rosé, which was the big duet of last year. So Rosé is one of the members of Blackpink, the big K-pop band. And this is according to the industry body, the IFPI. So they produce these charts of the top singles, top albums, top artists. And we're going to talk about some of those some more, aren't we, I think? So this is based on streams and sales. And this is based on like weighting, where were those streams from people who are paying or not? Where in the world were they? So that 2.06 billion figure isn't just streams. It's kind of a weighted figure of chart units. So one lesson here, Bruno Mars also was fourth in the chart of best singles, big singles last year with Die With A Smile with Lady Gaga. So if you want a massive global pop hit, you're going to give Bruno a call. Although you probably have to be a massive global pop star to get him to answer. 8 of the top 10 singles last year came out in 2024. And that says something about how our streaming world works and that things hang around for bloody ages.
Yeah.
And in terms of money, I mean, it's very hard to work out money, but if it was like 2 billion streams, it's kind of $14 to $15 million of payouts, which is that's a big hit nowadays. But it depends where those streams are and how economically valuable they are. But yeah, so Bruno and Rosé.
Just remind us who the IFPI, who they are, and about their very expensive report.
Yes,
a comprehensive and expensive report.
Yeah, they're the global labels body. So they are the BPI in the UK, the RIA in the US, and the IFPI is kind of the umbrella for all those organizations that represent record labels and recorded music. And they do this annual report, which is coming, I think it's next month. Which basically is all the stats on the industry and recordings and how much they sold and how much money is being generated.
Right.
They have this report. We said, I'm going to check how much it is last year. Last year's report. So this is like all the figures about the music industry. And last year's one, I think, was, I'm clicking buy now, £16,500.
There you go.
I'm not clicking buy now, actually. I'm going to close that tab straight away.
All right, 3 more talking points this week. We'll stay with that IF. Why is that so hard to say? We'll stay with the IFPI report because have you heard of a Japanese rock band called Mrs. Green Apple? And if your answer's no, you're in good company. I'd never heard of Mrs. Green Apple, but the reason we mentioned Mrs. Green Apple is because they were the 13th biggest artist in the world last year. So bigger than Eminem, bigger than Ed Sheeran, apparently bigger than Justin Bieber. That's Mrs. Green Apple. I presume you've looked them up by now, Mrs. Green Apple. I guess you've probably got a playlist of them, have you?
Well, it's one of those things where you see a name and you end up going down that little road of discovery. So yeah, they're a Japanese rock band. They've been going since, I think it's 2014. And they're in the IFPI's chart of biggest artists from last year at number 13, which is kind of interesting because traditionally Japan is it's its own market. Its biggest artists are really big there. They don't necessarily translate so well to the West, certainly. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because I think one of the conclusions you might jump to in this news is, the biggest bands in Japan sell a lot of albums, like they sell a lot of physical albums. Maybe that's it, because this chart is about value and sales count a lot to it. But their latest album was the 19th biggest album last year by sales, so actual people buying it. Mm-hmm. But it was the 11th biggest in streams. So they really are a popular enough band to be kind of up there with those big Western names you mentioned.
So in all these charts, do they do an end of year album chart at all?
They do, yes.
Okay, so for next week, will you do us a favour for next week? And on going back to your point about singles and how many of the singles were actually released last year, have a look to see when the albums in the album chart came out. And there's a reason for this. I was doing some research for a podcast series which we're currently making, and so I ended up living an entire afternoon back in 1989. But the end of year albums for 1989, the best selling albums in the UK, only I think 7 of them had been released in previous years, and none of those 7 had been released before I think 87. So there were 7 records which came out in 87 and 88, which was still popular enough to be a part of the top 40 biggest albums of 89. But I'm sure now, if you go and have a look, there are albums which are just, and this is a point we've made before, but albums hang around as well for ages now, don't they? I mean, I noticed in one of those charts you sent us that The Weeknd are still there. The Weeknd never need to make another record, do they? Because
he's done a good job. Yeah.
Once you've got the catalogue out there, The Weeknd are always going to be in an end of year chart. But we'll come back to that next week. Actually, though, talking of charts, here's a couple of points which we thought were worth picking up on. This story, I noticed, must have been press released by someone, because even BBC News picked this one up. The number 1 by Sam Fender and Olivia Dean. How long did it take to reach the top spot? 35 weeks. 35 weeks after it was released, it went to number 1. What do we put this down to? Because it's beaten the old record by a country mile.
Yeah, I think the last one, it was 19 weeks for Ed Sheeran was the previous record. And that was, And it's weird because we're talking about things hanging around for ages, aren't we? Popular. But this idea of taking that long to get to the top, it is quite unusual. So this is Rein Me In. It was actually a Sam Fender album track, came out last February on his album. And then Olivia Dean, I'm not sure of the exact order. I think she performed it live with him at his big right in the summer.
Mm.
And then I think the remix was released, which featured her on it. So It then became a duet. And that's what's been 35 weeks. And it's hard I'm trying to get to the bottom of why, because, I mean, the label boss, was press release, and the label boss essentially said, it's a brilliant song by 2 brilliant performers, which as a label boss is exactly what you have to say. You can't say, we did this interesting marketing, or we did this TikTok campaign, or this is what we did to help it get to number 1. It's got to be all about the song and the artist, and that's understandable. But I suspect there will be a story behind this, because if you're a modern record label and you see something that's kind of gradually building, you don't just sort of sit back and hope it'll get to number 1. You start doing stuff. So I'm going to be interested to find out in coming weeks, like why and how. But obviously they're both important. Olivia Dean won a Grammy recently. Sam Fender won the Mercury Prize. Like, they've both been having that kind of arc, haven't they, of growing as well. So it's kind of perfect storm.
Would it also be true to say that, if it's reasonably popular at one point, people have seen them perform the song together at said gig, so they listen to it. It gets to a certain level of popularity, which will then push it onto 1 or 2 playlists, which will make it more popular, which will then end up with the track being on even more playlists, and that's how it gains traction.
Yeah, and I think there is still a quality thing here, in that people aren't skipping it on those playlists, which either means they're not really listening carefully, they didn't skip anything, but I think also it does mean that people like it. People are playing it on repeat, and people are playing with. So, but yeah, there is a sort of there's a what's it called? There's a gathering momentum for songs when they get to this level of hit, where it just kind of rolls on, and then people add it to their own playlists. And I mean, I don't know. This is not. Me and my friends, people I know, are not a good sample group for anything really, but there are a lot of people out there who have their my favorite songs this year playlist, and if they put something on there, they just will play it a lot. So I think there's a lot of that when you pick up the momentum, people are adding it to their own things. But yeah, and it's I don't know, it's like you say, for the British music industry, it's no surprise they're celebrating it, because there has been that period of going, oh my God, what's happening to all the British artists globally? And Sam, Fender and Olivia Dean individually are things that the industry wants to hold up and say, look, we can still break artists and not just here in the UK. Yeah. So I'm not surprised everyone is jumping on this and going, look at this great story. It's because they're so brilliant and popular. But there's definitely there've been some hard work going into that final push, I reckon, to get it to number one. So yeah.
Can I just mention this as well, finally on the charts? This week's top 30 singles chart, I had a look at this. This was after I looked up, and we'll come back to this in the lock-in, the popularity of certain solo artists and the amount of tickets they're now selling. But also I guess, it comes back to streaming again. But I looked up the top 30 singles chart just to see how popular some of these, live favourites were. And I went through the top 30. Do you know what? There's not a single band in the top 30 this week. Not one band in the top 30 singles chart this week. I don't think I ever envisaged a time when bands would mean so little to mainstream pop music, but this is where we are now. Well, this week.
Do you think this has been going on for months and we haven't noticed, or do you think this is a?
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly. Maybe I'm showing my age, but kids, what's happening? Is this partly because of the economics of pop music these days? That it's just cheaper to be a solo artist. You can make more money as a solo artist, and so that's the route that more artists, more songwriters are going down? Or is it because the music that's currently popular lends itself more to solo artists, to the bedroom singers, or someone who's writing electro music in their little office studio at home? Is it the electro innovators, the torch singers, all sat at home with their software, possibly? Is that where we are? Is it the music that's leading this? I don't know. I'm not being scornful at all. Trust me. I'm just of anyone. I don't have a downer on people who want to go it alone. I'm fascinated by the fact that music listening now is just so dominated by individuals doing their own thing. Obviously, some of them surrounded by bands or session musicians or friends, but I'd love to know what people think. Usual email address.
Yeah. Well, one thing is, I think that didn't happen in the past is there's like multiple entries. So Olivia Dean's got a few tracks on there. Charlie XCX has got a few tracks on there. Samba's got a few tracks. So that's one difference, I think, is that if you're a big solo artist, you're more than likely to have 2 or 3 songs in the top 30 at once rather than one.
But couldn't you do that with bands?
Well, yeah.
If in the old, I noticed you shied away from saying old days. I'm going to say old days. In the old days, if there was a popular band, that band would have repeat tracks in the top 30 as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So outliers, right? So there is a group in the top 30, but that's Huntrix, who are entirely virtual K-pop Demon Hunters characters.
Yeah, don't.
I guess they are good. Is Tame Impala a band?
Yeah, Tame Impala.
Is that one guy? Is it the band, do you think? I
call them a band, but when I looked, they were about, what were they, 34 or something?
32. And then, if Tame Impala is one guy who has people playing with him, or band, I don't know. If he's not a band, then the top band are Fleetwood Mac at number 34 in the singles chart, which we've talked about Fleetwood Mac's enduring popularity, haven't we, because of streaming. But I always thought that was albums. But their song Landslide is number 34 in the pop charts.
Again, though,
I'm not sure what's going on.
Where is this coming from? Is there? It'd be impossible. One week we should just not do anything else apart from forensically go through all the playlists, all the most popular playlists on the streaming services, the ones that have clout, and see just how much they are affecting everything else.
Do you know? I've just found something else looking down. Okay, so if we're going down the chart beyond 30. I'm going to go the bands I see, okay? 34, Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. The next band is number 43, The Cure, Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah.
The next band
That's a new version, though, isn't it? That's why So there's a version of it which, we found it in a cupboard. Robert Smith's favourite. He says it's the definitive version of Boys Don't Cry. So they've reissued that in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So that's why that's there.
53, Mr. Brightside, good old Mr. Brightside.
Yeah, always.
58, Iris, Goo Goo Dolls. Like, I don't think you can even get in the top 60 as a new band. No. You have to be a band with several decades and 200 odd track weeks. So there is something really, really strange going on. But I suppose the other thing I always wonder about, if it's typical, like if a big band release an album next week, they'll have a bunch of tracks in there, so it will suddenly flip again. But I think you pinpointed something interesting there.
But I think it's more the trend though. As you say, there's no new bands, if you like, in there. And is this already becoming something within the music industry and we all know that the music industry will go where it thinks the trend is. And if the music industry have a hit with a solo artist, they will sign more solo artists. And if the music industry wakes up on a Monday morning, looks at Friday's chart and sees an entire top 30 full of solo artists, then they'll think, well, solo, this is the way to go. And so it goes into a spiral, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because it'd be great to hear some bands and how they feel. Is this making bands feel downhearted and we shouldn't bother, or are they doing their own thing and not caring about the chart positions anymore? I'd love to know how bands feel about this. Like are they sad, or are they just like, well, we don't need it?
I mean, that is true. I'm probably the only one who's thought that this is of any note within rock music, but we shall see. As I say, your thoughts, please. Any other business? We should just quickly mention this because it's the end of a story which we've been covering for over a year, and it's one. I mean, I think this is going to disappoint quite a lot of the indie advocates out there, including AIM, the Association of Independent Music, amongst them. But last week or the week before, at the end of the previous week, the European regulators approved that takeover by Universal Music Group of the independent firm Downtown Music, just for the final time. Now we won't have to touch this story again. I don't think it's too much. But tell us what this was all about, because the deal, as soon as it was approved, within a week, the deal's actually gone through, hasn't it? Virgin Music Group now own Downtown Music. But why is that important, and how did it happen?
Yeah, so this has been going on for ages. It was announced a year and a half ago, wasn't it? Now, more than that. So so Virgin Music Group, which is a bit of Universal Music that deals with independent music in terms of, it's a distributor and artist services company. It helps artists. So it's just the indie bit of UMG. And I know some people will go there at that thought, but that is. And so now it owns Downtown Music, which Downtown Music is this multi-pronged firm. It does publishing, it does royalty collecting, it has, it works with a bunch of independent artists in different ways and labels. So it's now part of VMG, which is part of UMG, acronym fans. And what's going to happen now is the first thing they're going to do is they're going to sell a thing called Curve, which is Downtown's royalty processing company. So it's a company that artists and labels can use to kind of process their royalties from streaming on these different places. And the regulators said that was the one sticking point with the deal going through, was saying, well, we're a bit worried about Curve has got all this data on people's royalties and streams. And if Universal owns that data, it could use it in anti-competitive ways. So they've said, no, we'll sell this Curve. And this is a very sort of inside baseball thing, but that's going to spark a who's going to buy it debate. And whoever buys this, it could become a big new service used by independent labels and artists. So that's one strand of this. And otherwise, they're going to kind of get on with integrating it. And what's happening is, I mean, the approval was announced, and then Universal announced the completion of the deal. But we also heard from the independent bodies. So we heard from Impala, which is the European indies body. It's been very, very prominent in fighting this. We heard from WIN, which is the global labels body as well. And I mean, essentially, they did lose in that the deal went through and they didn't want it to go through. But what the indie bodies have been saying is, actually, we think it's a partial victory because the regulators took a really long, hard look at this and they made them do a change. They made them sell this bit Curve before they get it through. And so in both cases, these bodies have said, we think this is really good, this level of scrutiny and this willingness to tell them you can't do this unless you sell off that bit. Impala said it sends a clear message that future acquisitions will be subject to tough and lengthy scrutiny. So that's the line coming out of the indie camp against this deal, that this shows that any time major tries to buy a big independent music firm in future, the regulators will be on them like a ton of bricks.
I think they must be bitterly disappointed, though, because in the cut and thrust of the arguments that were going backwards and forwards, there was quite the language aimed at Universal, and their harvesting of various independent firms. I mean, they were so vehemently anti this happening that I don't know if we can underestimate just how strongly some people feel about this. Because I mean, if at the end of this whole process, and yes, it's good that regulators took their time, but in the end, green lighting this, surely the worry then is that there'll be more acquisitions by the majors of independent firms to follow. Yeah, because they'll be scrutinised and then green lighted, scrutinised then green lighted. I don't know. That's why I think, and particularly, I'm sure AIM are hurting this week.
Yeah, I mean, there are two other things to say about it. One is, and one of the things where I think that the people were less angry and more thoughtful was, Impala said this. What they do want is they want independent music companies to be able to sell if they want to, because that's how, I guess, innovation works and entrepreneurs work. That if you set up a company, at some point you might want to sell it. Mm-hmm. And if you can sell it, that encourages people to set up independent companies and start. So they're saying, okay, right, if we don't want them to sell to major companies, we need to figure out how to have other people who would like to buy them. We need to have, how can we make independent music something that other people buy into? So that's one of the longer term things here. They think it's going to make, it's in a way, the fact that Universal paid, I think it was $775 million for Downtown. That does say independent music is valuable, and maybe there'll be other people who want to come in and buy who aren't Universal. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think there's going to be some afters for this. So one of the things that might happen now is some artists may decide, or songwriters may decide, I don't want to carry on using Downtown. If I'm using them to collect my royalties, my publishing, I don't want to be within Universal if I'm independent. And everyone is saying they're going to watch very carefully to make sure that no one is kind of restricted from leaving if they want to. So if they want to leave Downtown, can they take all their data with them? They're not given any kind of reasons why they can't. So that's the afters here, that people are watching and saying, right, you did say that it would be fine if people wanted to leave us once we own this company. Now you have to follow through on that. So I think there's a lot of we're going to keep watching them because we don't trust them one bit about this. But yeah, it's a knock. But I think it's to give the other side, Universal and Virgin have both talked about how they want to make Downtown bigger and better and provide better services for the independent artists it does work with. And I think it's important to put that, because I think the arguments haven't been about there's not good people there wanting to do good things. So one positive outcome here is they put more money behind it, and it does a good job for the independent artists who are still there.
All right. The company that helped Radiohead, Bad Bunny and Oasis make sure fans, not touts, got tickets for their tours is now looking to expand and help more artists.
Yeah, I wanted to raise this. I want to see what you think about it, really, because it's a company called OpenStage, and we've talked about them before, but they help artists basically build a database or a mailing list of their fans and then give them first dibs on tickets. And the whole idea is we want to get tickets in hands of fans, not touts, like I said. So if anyone who registered for Radiohead tickets and were told, yes, you've got a code, you can go in and try and buy. They did that. I got my Super Fur Animals tickets through a system they ran as well. So they're working with a growing number of artists. And yeah, the news is they're opening up to other artists. It's called Ticket Unlocks. So the idea is that more and more artists can do this when they're going to have concerts that are going to sell out. They're going to help them say, right, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do a lottery where fans just apply and you do it at random? Do you want to do a weighted thing where you're basically essentially saying, who are my biggest fans? Well, who reads the emails I send? Who clicks on the links to the emails? Who buys merch? Who's bought tickets before? And that's, I think, the thing that's in my mind about this maybe new era we're going to, where is the answer to ticket touting starting to rank fans by their fandom and say, yeah, you qualify for a ticket because we can see these things you've done that make you a fan. You don't qualify for a ticket because we can't see. And I'm in two minds about that. Like this idea of an artist being able to say, yes, here are my top 1,000 fans, I'll give them tickets first. On the one hand, that does shut the touts out. It's very hard to kind of game that system with a bot. On the other hand, if you're not in that top 1,000, but you love a band or an artist, you end up feeling a bit sad or angry.
Yeah.
But this feels like where we're going now, this idea of there's loads of data on everything that a fan does to do with an artist. So shall we use it to decide who comes to the concerts?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of dangers with that, I think. I mean, and I get why you would do it. And on the face of it, that's good. I mean, the good thing is, all right, we're getting the tickets to actual fans, but aren't you in danger of selling your tickets to the same 1,000 fans every time? Because then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because who came to our last gig? Well, the 1,000 we picked last time. So now it's the same 1,000 again. Well,
you could use it to say not that 1,000, another 1,000. So you could use this technology in different ways. Yeah, you could use it to say,
do you want to be that involved in picking and choosing who's going to your gigs? Look, I think it's great that there's, that we're using the data in some way to lock out the touts. What you do with it, how you do it, I think, well, as you say, will come down to individual artists because they'll have the choice of how they do it. Do you, as you say, do you do a lottery? Do you rank people? But at least it's not, the ticket prices aren't, before legislation comes in, being inflated by the fact that someone who doesn't live in this country has set up a bot farm which has raided the virtual ticket office. So interesting. Yeah. We haven't done anything about TikTok for a while. Here's a TikTok story. If you use TikTok or the TikTok app, you can now stream full music songs rather than just the clips. There's one catch though, I believe.
There is. You have to be on Apple Music. And it doesn't work here in the UK yet or US. But this is interesting, though. This is another one, a little story, but it illustrates a trend of how things are going. So, yeah, there's a new button in TikTok in some countries that lets you, when you watch a video and discover a song that's in the background, you can click a little play full song button and listen to the full song from Apple Music, because you can't do that in TikTok at the moment. It didn't have a license to stream you full songs.
Right.
So, in the past, you could click a button and it would take you out into your streaming app if you'd set it up. Right. So it's a little thing that cuts down that friction, and it does tie into what music industry likes, which is that lots of people are hearing music in TikTok, and they may be watching. I mean, that Fleetwood Mac is a famous example of a guy skateboarding down the street drinking cranberry juice, but they were listening to Fleetwood Mac, and it sent the song back into the charts. So this stuff has happened before. Like if your song goes viral on TikTok, it can lead to an increase in streams elsewhere, but there's kind of a few steps in between that. Someone has to go and find the song.
Yeah.
So the logical extension of this is it launches in more countries and it adds the other streaming services. So if you're a Spotify subscriber or a YouTube subscriber or an Amazon, you can do this too. And it could be a good thing, I think, because at the moment there is this worry that you don't get a lot of money from your song being in TikTok videos. And the argument has always been, yeah, but promotion, you get more streams elsewhere, possibly. Look at what Fleetwood Mac did. And it's a bit unscientific. But it would be a good thing because, and again, to come back to our idea about like people actively liking stuff, if you just are watching endless TikTok videos, swiping your way down your feed, not really paying attention to music, fair enough. But if a song stops you in your tracks and you go, I want to hear what that is, it would be great if there's literally just one button to go and listen to it in full. And it could turn some of this passive listening that we kind of worry about into people going, I know that song. I'm going to follow that artist. I'm going to find out more about them. And then, everything becomes a bit more positive. So it's a good thing, but for now, it's a limited experiment. Many people listening to this won't be able to get it in TikTok if they're on TikTok.
Right.
Okay. But yeah.
And finally, for this week, back to our friends at UMG, Universal Music Group have signed a hot but not so new band this month. UMG have signed The Wiggles.
The Wiggles. Have you ever had to say that phrase, that 2-word phrase before?
What, The Wiggles?
In a broadcast.
And like, but just before I give you my Tuppenny worth on this,
Yeah.
the Wiggles are they Australian?
They are.
No, they're Australian, and basically, how would you describe the Wiggles?
Well, they're kind of children's pop music. They don't have TV show music. They make pop kids. They wear colourful Star Trek style outfits, don't they? So there's like red wiggle and blue wiggle and green wiggle, so they're easily identifiable. And they've been going since 1991, and they are literally one of the biggest things outside Australia too, I think, for kids.
Oh, it's like no one will remember the TV programme, unless you're of a certain age, Rainbow. But it's like Rainbow meets the New Seekers. I mean, there's one, there's two for the kids. But I mean, I know this is a throwaway story, but you see, for me, unwittingly, this says so much, though, about what is happening in a certain part of the music industry at the moment. And obviously, why have they signed Wiggles? Well, because it makes absolute business sense, I guess. Give us the stats, because this will be the reason then.
Yeah, they've had more than 4 billion music streams and 6 billion YouTube views. Over their career. And they're one of those bands that regenerate as well. So I think the original Wiggles are all, too old to perform now, and they've just got these. They've replaced them with younger Wiggles, so now they're all kind of young and fresh faced.
So
it's a brand. It's like a franchise and a brand, not like a group of 4 people.
I know. He said with a sigh of disappointed resignation. But you know what this says? There's two things that this says. One, I know they're an ongoing group, and as you say, regenerating like Doctor Who. But it's heritage artists again, isn't it? It's proven artists, actual proven artists who are increasingly tempting for record labels to get involved with, because it's the blueprint. I know, this first started probably back in the 90s when, there were various labels set up to sign bands who'd been dropped by majors, but still had a certain size following that you can make money out of. But, it is now, this is more and more prevalent. Let's invest in something that we know people have liked and will still like. And in Wiggles' case, again, the audience will keep coming. It will just be a different audience. It's not like it's one audience that will grow old with them. But it comes back to, why risk signing something new that might fail when you can sign something which is nailed on to recoup? However much they've signed them for, you can see at the end of it, right, we will have made our money back by this point, unless something unforeseen happens. That's one thing. And the other thing, based on those stats, I know there's always, there's always been novelty records. There's always been, kids acts which have been popular. But now, these days, that it's all down to, isn't it? It's UMG have looked at YouTube and thought, these kids having they properly coin it in, don't they? I mean, there's money in that under sevens market, having looked at, you're quite good at bringing up, things that sell well with the under fives. But obviously now labels are going, let's have a piece of that. Why would we bother signing a band with leather trousers and attitude when we know we can make money out of something which has a captive audience?
If you're a band with leather trousers and attitude, maybe you need to get some colourful T-shirts and start writing songs about animals with the converse of that. I mean, it's so, this is why, because I know I always mention things like Baby Shark and Wheels on the Bus, but I am so fascinated by it. I feel like parents know, and they're like, my child. But this is the thing, like, where a lot of the industry is worrying a bit, and we've talked about this idea of passive listening, haven't we? And people just playing a playlist and not really caring who's on it. You know who doesn't do that? Kids. Kids go, play that again, play that again, play it for a 12th time in a row because I love it so much. And so there is money there. There's repeat things, and it's so I think you're right though. It's a proven brand. And it's one of those things where it's a live entertainment brand. They play these big concerts and pack out, theatres.
Big. They're doing the Excel Centre in London twice. They're doing Birmingham Symphony Hall. Their UK tour is, as you say, 10 very big dates in April.
In Australia, I think I need to talk to some Australians about this, but there's been a lot of talk this year about how there's worry in Australia about local artists aren't doing so well on streaming locally. to Australians as doing more American acts and so on. The Wiggles are kind of the thing that bucks the trend. The Wiggles are the one that lots of Australians are playing. And yeah, if you're in the Australian industry thinking about bands and new artists, the fact that the Wiggles are so big, I mean, it doesn't really affect you because they're not cannibalizing adults who might listen to you. But it does sort of highlight, doesn't it? The thing, yeah, what's the biggest band in Australia right now? Someone's been going since 1991 making songs for kids.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, astute business. But
do you know what they're signed? They're going to be putting stuff out through Republic Records in the US, or the kids bit of that. So they're label mates of Taylor Swift and Nicki Minaj and The Weeknd now, which is an amusing little side thing of that.
Well, look, as a man of a certain age, I'm definitely more Wombles than Wiggles. And that's it for this. I don't know how we ended up here. Thank you very much for listening. If you are enjoying the show, please do spread the word. You can also support us via our Patreon page. In fact, if you sign up to be a super fan, you get to join us for our weekly lock-in. You can stay behind after hours. You get an extra 15 minutes or so of bonus material this week. Remixing your favourite band, how much a gold disc's worth, and artists who've taken umbrage at their pictures on Wikipedia. That's coming up. You can gain access to it by becoming a super fan at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. Alternatively, if you'd like to get in touch with us, just send us an email. Thank you to everyone who's been in touch, I should say, and asked us a few questions. We are working on some of those for possibly next week and the week after. But anything you don't understand about how the industry works that we might be able to clear up for you, drop us a line, thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Till next week, cheerio.